Top 10 questions that small business owners are Googling about the subject of how do I sell my business? Question number 1 is, no surprises here, how much is my business worth? This is the one question that all business owners that I speak to have a question about. So you have a small business, you've been running it for years and years, but you actually have no idea what it's worth. 98% of the population have no idea of the population. 98% of small business owners don't know the answer to that question. So what do you do? Step 1 is you have to get a business valuation done. This will give you, you can get one done with a business broker. I do valuations. I'm not doing that to sell you a valuation, just giving you the information. But you have to get a valuation done because it's going to give you a range of what somebody would pay for your business. Okay, that's how you find out. Number 2. Is now a good time to sell or should I wait? So that's a tough question, right? Because is this a good time to sell is really depending on you and depending on your business. So market timing is going to be nearly impossible. There are factors to consider. One factor is, how's your industry looking? How is that doing? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it tough because of what's happened through COVID with online sales, retail sales? So that's the first thing to look at. The second thing is, let's just say if you look at your industry and you say, okay, I need to put in a bit more work to increase my sales. But the second thing, which really ends up being more important, is how are you doing? Do you have a few more years left where can you invest time and effort into some growth, or do you feel that you've plateaued out? So I think the question really comes down to, how do you feel? I typically, and this is just typically, once somebody reaches 70, the people I speak to, they always let me know that it's not that they've run out of steam, it's just that they don't have the energy that they used to. And that's just what they tell me. Okay, I'm just a little bit more tired now. I don't think I can, 2 recessions, COVID, I don't have any more bandwidth to be able to actually grow the business anymore. So it may just be that you're at a point where you would like to retire and you can maintain, but you can't necessarily make improvements. So that's going to be a you question, right? But it's a really good question. Is now a good time to sell? And then, of course, here's a great example actually where the market did dictate. So I know that in 2019, I've spoken to a fair amount of people that were planning to sell in 2019, and then COVID happened and they really did have to just maintain and get through that. And now they're out on the other side and they're ready to sell again. But during that time, it would have made no sense for them to try and sell their businesses because some of them were closed down. So there was no revenue, very little revenue. It's dependent on you. It can be dependent on the market. Typically, market timing doesn't really come into play, but COVID it did. And then your industry, how's that doing? And how many buyers are going to be available to you? Certainly, if you speak to a professional that works in the field of selling businesses, and they'll be able to give you an analysis of that. Number 3, let's move on. There we go. Who would actually buy my business? That's a great question, right? So you have several types of buyers for your business. You would be able to sell to a strategic buyer or a friendly competitor if you have somebody in mind there. You could sell to an employee if you have a key employee. Lenders love the businesses transferring to a key employee, a management buyout, because that is something that they can know that the person that's going to be taking over the reins from you actually knows how to run that business. Okay, who else could you sell the business to? You could sell to an outside buyer who is either from the industry or not from the industry, but they could be somebody that is looking to, maybe we see quite a few people that are in corporate jobs and they want to get out of them. And they see buying a business as a great way out instead of starting one. They typically will have some money saved up. They'll have money in a 401k and they can actually use that money to help fund the business acquisition. There are private equity groups. There are family offices. These would be for slightly larger small businesses, but they want a certain amount of cash flow is really what I'm trying to say. And then there are There are people that are called searchers, and they participate in entrepreneurship through acquisition. So these will be typically people that are very well educated and they have learned about acquiring businesses and they are now looking to do. And one other that I was just thinking of, there's a family member too, right? Let's not forget about the kids. You could certainly sell your business to your children. I would, again, I say this all the time, but I would get a valuation, even if you're selling to your children, because it stops any confusion once you get the process going. Okay, gosh, I can't believe I forgot the kids. I don't typically see a lot of children wanting to buy their parents' businesses, but it sure would be nice. Okay, question number 4. What do I need to do to get the business ready for sale? Okay, financial records, operations and staffing, etc. is the Google answer to this question. So yes, you need to get your financials ready. You need to ensure that you have your tax returns and your company financials, your books, and then we need to make sure that those are checked and everything reconciles with your tax returns. That's going to be really important, okay? If you'd like more information about that, just you can comment and I can help you with that. But that's one of the things that I think a lot of small business owners overlook. But if somebody's going to be getting a loan, that is going to be really important for them to be able to borrow money. Other things are your operations. Are they strong? Do you have documented systems and processes? And how's the team? Are they all trained up and will they stay? That's going to be really important. Okay, number 5. How long will it take to sell? From listing to closing. So it can take anywhere from 6 months to 12 months. It could take it could take 18 months, but ideally, if everything was lined up really well, 6 months would be great. 9 months, probably more realistic. And then it just depends on it. There's so many things that have to line up. But if all the boxes were checked and you were ready to go and you had your financials in order, you had written processes, you had a strong buyer, and we were working with a really good lender, say Live Oak Bank or something like that, then 6 months. But you'd have to have everything in order. Now, if you were doing some sort of creative financing, it could be a little bit quicker. So if you were looking at doing owner financing, the timeline could definitely change, but you have to have lawyers involved. There are contracts, there's due diligence, and all of that takes time. And I have heard of businesses taking 3 years to sell. But ideally, you want to get everything in order before you go to market, because the last thing that you want to do is put the business on the market and then have it not sell or just sit there for sale because you don't have everything ready. Okay. And just know as well, not to be Nelly negative, but of all the businesses that do go up for sale, only 20% of those sell. So that's something that you've got to keep in mind when you get ready. It may seem like a pain, especially when somebody like me is doing a valuation and then I ask you for all of these documents, which many of them I can help to gather up for you. But it's painful, but if you don't do it, you won't get the result you want. Okay, number 6. Will I have to stay on after the sale? Great question. That also depends. It depends on you, depends on the business. If the business is really well run and you have great systems and processes, probably not, right? You can include a certain amount of hours as part of the sale of the business. If you go on to BizBuySell, which is a large marketplace where businesses are for sale, you'll see it's typically 80 hours, 80. So that's included as with the purchase. But if there are some risky things, if the buyer is unsure about the business, or if they're coming from outside of the industry, they may want you to stay on longer, or they may want you to just stay on as a consultant and be the face of the business. But it really depends. If there's some risk involved or something that they need to work through, they may want you to stay on longer. But it's going to be up to you. If you want to retire and you get the business ready, there's no reason why you shouldn't. Okay, what are the tax implications of selling? That is going to be a great accountant question, but it's really important that you get out ahead of this. So when we get to the part of the deal, essentially, there is some of the paperwork is called the allocation of the purchase price, and how the purchase price is allocated can greatly affect how you are taxed after the sale. So my answer for that question is you are going to want to get tax advice, and you're going to want to get it before you put the business on the market. I know some of this can tend to be reactionary with business owners because they're so busy, but I don't recommend that. I think that you want to know how to act and how to set this up before there's a taxable event. Number 8, how do I keep it confidential from staff, customers, and competitors while attracting serious buyers? Okay, great. Well, that's where if you bring on a good business broker or a business advisor, that's where they can do that work. So the process, if you list the business with a broker, the process is for everything to be confidential, and then they will market the business for you, and they will have also a list of buyers. I personally have a preferred buyer list, and these are people that have filled out information for me ahead of time. So we can market to our buyer list. We can confidentially put your business on the internet for sale. We can advertise it locally to strategic buyers via a confidential direct outreach. We also can, I've advertised before discreetly in trade magazines to find a younger buyer to come in and take over and almost apprentice under the owner. And in keeping everything confidential, your business name they sign a non-disclosure agreement. Everybody does. And initially they receive what's called a blind, it's a SIM, a confidential information memorandum, but there's a blind version where we can show them information about the business without giving them any information about the business. So if you work with a broker, they're skilled in, that's what we're trained to do. And if you wanted to advertise it yourself, that's going to be harder, right? It's definitely going to be more difficult because you're going to be fielding those calls yourself from not wanting to trip yourself up. But you can, if you get a lawyer and if you have a non-disclosure agreement in place, you can certainly handle that too. Number 9, can I sell the business without the property or vice versa? Interesting. Okay, so yes, you can sell the business without the real estate. Many times buyers will want to buy just the business and they want to have a lease. Absolutely. So if you own the real estate, my father, for example, he had a business and he also bought the building and he used the business through the years to pay off the building. And so he didn't end up selling, but he did keep the building and he actually ended up leasing that to another business. But an ideal situation for him would have been to keep the building, sell the business, then put his new buyers in that business and then receive rent from the business that he had sold. That would be ideal. So you can do that. And then vice versa. Can I sell the property without the business? Sure. Yeah. That doesn't make much sense to me why you would do that. But yes, if you can, if the property is in a different entity. Yeah. It's weird that it has that on there, right? Because if you still had the business, why would you want to sell the property? Then you'd be getting yourself a landlord, but maybe you want to free up some capital. Okay, and number 10 is, what fees will I pay to sell and what's included? Oh, that's a really good question. When you're preparing to sell a business and you work with a business broker, typically the broker is going to work off a success fee. So there'll be no upfront cost for you and they will take all the risk with you and they only get paid when you get paid. But there are other fees that you have to pay. You have to pay legal fees. And if you have to do any accounting work, maybe you have to do some bookkeeping cleanup, or you pay your accountant to give you tax advice. So depending on the size of your business, I can't give you an exact dollar amount, but you will have CPA fees. You will have closing costs. You'll split the closing costs with the buyer. You will have legal fees. You will absolutely want attorneys reviewing your documents and making sure that you're protected. And you will have broker fees. Broker fees typically will be 10 to 12% of the purchase price, but you pay those on the back end. But you will have other fees during the process. So hopefully that's helpful. And if you have a question that you would answered, you can drop it in the comments.